and welcome to the Women in Road Safety Network event. It's an honor to have you all join us today for what promises to be an enlightening and inspiring webinar. As we gather today, virtually connected, we are reminded of the power of networks in fostering innovation, collaboration, and growth. Women in Road Safety Network aims to bring together the brightest minds and the most dedicated professionals to share knowledge, exchange ideas, and build lasting connections. And today's event is no exception. Whatever you're here to gain new insights or find inspiration for your next big project or career, or just ask questions and engage in meaningful discussions, welcome you all. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands where you're all joining from today. I'm joining from Canberra, so I'd like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people. We pay respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend the respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples joining us today. I particularly would like to thank the Women Road Safety Network and the events team who have organised the event today. And I'll pass the virtual microphone to Fiona and Andrea. Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Wonderful. Thanks, Alexandra. It's wonderful to have you all here today. It's going to be a bit of an interesting exercise to have a chat with Sam and find out what her story has been and her journey through road safety. So I hope you're all ready to listen up. Just a couple of housekeeping things from me before we start. We will be doing Q&A, so please use the Q&A function. It's along that toolbar on the bottom of your screen. Pick the Q&A one for questions that you want to ask Sam, and I'll be managing those at the end. If you just got chit-chat between yourselves, please by all means use the chat function, but I won't be so good at managing that, so if you please don't put your questions into that chat function, just to make life a little bit easier for me, please. This webinar is being recorded, as I'm sure you've got the note as you've acknowledged that as part of the presentation. So we will be recording this. The college will have it up on the website by probably the middle of next week, sometime next week, we'll be able to see it. It will then, 3 months down the track, it will be free to everybody on YouTube, but for the first 3 months, it's just through the college. So something to just keep an eye out for. And, you know, do a bit of a brag if you like, something that you know about. And please be encouraging people to join the network to find out more about what we're all about. So my pleasure to hand over to Andrea. She's going to introduce Sam to us and keep you all in the loop about what we're going to be hearing about today. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you. Our series of guest speakers will highlight a woman's career path from various streams from within the road safety community. And it's hopeful to empower those who will follow in their footsteps. Today, we focus on Samantha Cockfield, the Executive Head of Road Safety at Transport Accident Commission in Victoria, and it's one of the world's leading agencies. It's my great honour to introduce the legendary Sam Cockfield, whose presentation today is called My Accidental Vocation. Sam envisaged that her work life would be a service to humanity, but also take her places and experiences throughout the world to the UN and Red Cross and other NGOs. When she joined the TAC as a graduate, there was no road safety branch, and it's hard to believe that there was only 4 people in her division. Who would have thought back in those days that the road safety division at Transport Accident Commission would grow to be recognised throughout the world? Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the wonderful Samantha Cockfield.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for having me. And yes, it's very much the accidental career, because I certainly didn't join the TAC in terms of getting into road safety. So it's been a journey. I might just share with you my screen. So just hold on one moment while I do that. As usual, it always takes a bit of time to do this. Oh. I think this is the right one. And hopefully we're there. Maybe somebody can just let me know that they can see me. Not just me, so the slide.
Yes, we can see the slides.
Okay, now let me just see that, yes, that's moving. Just in starting, I'd also like to acknowledge our traditional owners and of the land which I'm presenting on today, which is the Wurundjeri people, but also pay respects to our elders past, present and emerging, and particularly extend my respects to any Aboriginal people joining today. So my road safety journey, yes, it's been a long one. It's been around 30 years now, and I don't think I could have ever envisaged when I started out that I would be in the same career path with very little change for over 30 years. This slide is really just like a holding slide, but for me, the fact that it's a campaign we launched a few weeks ago, and the fact that there is still new information, new evidence that we can bring out and use to save people's lives, it's such a great opportunity, you know, in terms of our future, and that we're still learning. It is very much part of my journey. So I just thought I'd start talk about where I started and what shaped me before I got into road safety. Probably the one thing that has been a staple in my life, but I was introduced to it when I was 7 years old, is lifesaving. So my parents introduced me to a lifesaving club where I became a nipper. Then I got involved in lifesaving itself and competition, but also then got onto committees. And what I was really lucky to find in that lifesaving club is a committee and people who wanted to nurture me as a junior committee member and get me involved in activities. And we actually managed during my sort of 12, 13 years on the committee to grow the club from 400 to 500 members to about 1,300 members. So not only was I involved in a community activity, a competition activity, but I was also involved in managing a very large organisation which had probably most of the areas that you might think about managing a business. We had a large finance and audit committee. We had committees for fundraising. We had an insurance function in there. But most of all, it was just servicing 1,200 people and learning how to work with people and ensure that you could continue to operate successfully as a club. One of the other enduring parts of my very early life was working for a big multinational called Estee Lauder. For those of you who don't know, it's a very large privately owned cosmetic and skincare company, which has continued to grow. But even when I worked for them in the late 1980s as a part-time student, I joined in year 11 over my Christmas break and continued right through university and even when I came back from overseas. But it was a private company, and Estee Lauder, which wasn't her real name, but she did call herself Estee Lauder, saw Melbourne as one of her key stakeholders in terms of her company. And whenever I was on reception and answered the phone, she'd say, "Samantha, you're still there. I thought you'd be doing something else by now." But it really taught me how much taking ownership of what you're developing and making sure that you remain very much part of your business and really be quite knowledgeable about everything that your business or your department, your team is doing, because the fact that she knew little Samantha sitting in the Melbourne office answering the phone from her New York office, I always just was amazed at. But this job was also very much shaping me as I really started to understand the power of marketing in that job and understanding maybe not for the good that we see in terms of road safety, but how that you could really change people's behaviour and how they thought about, in this case, particularly skincare, and how we could push people to change their behaviour in terms of buying product in that case. I pursued economics and politics. I did law too for a while at university, but my entire aim was to work internationally in international development. I really saw myself, I suppose, whether it was working for the Red Cross, the UN, UNICEF, I didn't really know where I'd end up, but I did see myself as working for the public good and being of service to others. That sort of came to a bit of an end in that I enrolled in a Masters of Economics of the Developing World, and the lecturer that was leading that got cancer, and they had to cancel the course not once but twice. So while they were reconsidering how they could run that course, I went and lived in Sri Lanka, which was really eye-opening for me as a probably 19, 20-year-old to be living in a country by myself that really, particularly in those days when we didn't have the internet, etc., was so different to ours and had so many needs. And in fact, while I lived there, was quite war-torn, and literally I was seeing bombings and people being gunned down, etc. So really another experience that shaped me. And I spent a bit of time throughout Asia when I was living in Sri Lanka. So that's my background, and that's what I think really started my shaping. But in terms of my start at the Transport Accident Commission, was 1990. I was back from overseas. My Masters in Economics course was still not moving, so I needed to find a job. And I was accepted as a graduate at the TAC, put on a graduate program, and spent 2 years moving right through what was various areas of the insurance side of our business. And it was interesting, and I loved it, but I couldn't see myself staying there forever. But during my time there, what happened was that the road safety function commenced, and I did think, this is something I could do. I still knew very little about road safety past what we all knew, what we saw on TV, what we knew from our parents, etc. But I did see that was something probably more up my alley, and I was very lucky to have had a job advertised for somebody with an economics background as a junior economist. And the first program that I started on, and it was myself and a senior consultant, so this wasn't somebody who worked for the TAC, managing an $80 million Blackspot program. It was the first time the TAC had truly invested in road safety, and my job was to develop the economic calculations for what TAC was going to invest in. And that's where I started. It was a very large project, thrown in completely at the deep end, but was with a very experienced consultant and learned a lot. I'll then start to say, well, in saying that, my career has actually gone really from that point, but it has remained at the TAC. And part of that is that I've actually been able to grow with that organisation. It's an organisation that I started with approximately 300 people. It was only a few years old, and we're now at about 1,200 people. We've moved from a big city office in Melbourne to a regional headquarters in Geelong, and along the way, it's really offered me so many opportunities to grow as a person, to grow my career, but also to do what I've always wanted to do, which is serve people in our community. I thought I'd just talk about what I think the three big points in my life, or the three things that have really, if I think about what's influenced me in my career, have blown my mind. And one is actually the Transport Accident Act, so what forms the TAC. The next was Vision Zero and understanding kinetic energy, which until Vision Zero came along, I'd never even thought about. And also access to an international community and a world stage. So you'll see that this slide is a little bit out of sync with the other slides that I've got in the pack, but it's deliberately so. This is pretty much the first slide I ever saw when I came to the TAC as a graduate. And it was describing the Transport Accident Act and the Transport Accident Scheme on a page. And basically what it explains is that as an organisation, we're actually set up to prevent people being killed and injured first. But if we can't do that, we're going to then offer them the very best opportunity to get from their crash to hospital, to another health destination as effectively and efficiently as possible, and offer them the best healthcare and long-term rehabilitation, and also look after them economically. And if we continue to invest in road safety, we would actually continue to reduce the number of people being killed and seriously injured on our roads, and also the cost of looking after people, particularly as we reduce the severity of crashes, to the Victorian community. So it was this systems approach, and I think as a fairly young person, I was probably about 22, I just had never thought that we had a piece of legislation that was designed so well, or that was so forward thinking and so holistic. So first thing that blew my mind, and I'm sort of pleased that it blew my mind, because the Transport Accident Act itself has had very little change over the years. So it was incredibly well designed and has proved to be very sustainable. We're about 36 years in, and we're still going strong, and still being able to invest in road safety and look after people who are injured, and the families of those who are killed. So that was my first mind-blowing moment. It's like, this scheme, it's just amazing. The second was Vision Zero and kinetic energy. I still remember the day that Klaus Tingvall, who we fairly much know as the person behind Vision Zero, was standing in the RACV club in Melbourne, for any of those who know it, upstairs. I think it's on the 17th level, where most of the conferences there are held, and started talking about this idea of Vision Zero and kinetic energy. And the two things that he said to me, the audience, but resonated with me, was that we all make mistakes and we need to plan for them. And we all have only so much tolerance to energy hitting our bodies before we actually start to become injured. The all make mistakes resonated so well. So this was about 2001, I think, because up to that point, the TAC had invested a huge amount of money in trying to change people's behaviour. And at that point, I think we all thought that was going to be how we would continue. That we actually thought there was an end point when everybody would be perfect, that we would really be able to make sure that people would behave well and we wouldn't have crashes because of that. We did understand already that infrastructure was really important too, and that we could support people making good decisions, but it really was a very behaviourally based focus, and lots of energy on making young people safer, really doing things to people rather than thinking how we can make the environments safer. The idea that nobody's perfect, to err is human, hadn't really occurred to me. And so the idea that we plan for these mistakes and people's errors hadn't occurred to me. So this was just mind-blowing. And then this other information about not only what sort of crashes we have, so the crash types and whether it be head-on or side impact, but we also knew what sort of tolerances the body had in terms of the energy being absorbed by the body. And so now, okay, we can actually start to plan, not just to change the way people think or what they do, but also start to plan for reducing the amount of energy in the system so that people just can't have these crashes that are going to cause these horrific injuries and in many cases in those days, death. I'm just absolutely mind-blowing to me. And, you know, I'm really pleased that this is mind-blowing. It was mind-blowing because it stayed the distance with me too and continues to be something I think about and use every day. And it really led to me and the teams that I was in at that time being able to do some really interesting and innovative work. Many of you will remember Graham, who we designed to try and explain what we might need to look like to absorb the sort of energy levels that we would normally see in a crash. Young Graham continues to travel the world. He's more well-travelled than I am. He's been in the Albert Museum in London, Poland, Brazil, Norway, Japan, Korea. So Graham has been everywhere to talk about how we might need to be built to survive on the roads and really trying to educate people about the safe system and the energy forces hitting our body. But it's really just an example of something that we've been able to do and the creativity that my job's allowed. And the Towards Zero brand that you see there, another opportunity. We did a huge amount of work to develop that brand and make sure it would resonate and serve us well. And again, a lot of work, but it's been very rewarding because now quite often, you know, everyone, I'm in London or Sydney, I see that brand being used internationally, and it's something we've been able to give the international community to use as well as Graham himself. The other thing that Towards Zero and the safe system approach has been able to help with, from my perspective, is better planning our investments in road safety and how we're going to, I suppose, make people or make the system safer. I'm just putting this up here. It's actually a slide from another presentation, but we deliberately went about the TAC working with the Department of Transport, I think it was then Vic Roads, designing how we would address our highest risk roads and call them the top 20. It actually ended up being the top 19 roads because two of them joined together, but the top 20 roads that we were going to address and reduce the risk considerably on, we were trying to make them all as close to 5-star as possible. We were concentrating on lane departure crashes, and they represented about 60% of our serious injury type crashes at that time. And the results have been really rewarding. Rolling out barriers, as many of you would know, it has not always been easy. Been a lot of pushback. It hasn't always been done perfectly in the Victorian context, and I'm sure in other contexts as well. But the results we've seen from our initial monitoring of those top 20 roads has been really quite astounding. 77% fewer fatalities, 94% of those serious injury cases, and these are the most serious injury cases, which of course are not only life-changing but are also the most costly to the TAC scheme, have been reduced. And one of the things that we do to look at the cost of the TAC scheme is how many days people spend in bed and in hospital beds, that is, sorry. And so it's 74% fewer bed days for TAC clients. And moving on, the third area which has really blown my mind is what a brilliant community we belong to, that being in road safety it's not just a job at the TAC, it's a job in the Victorian community, in the Australian community, and really internationally. From very early days, you know, really from the time that we've had the internet and been able to email people interstate and internationally, everybody that I've ever asked for any information, their research findings, or to have a chat has been so open about sharing and so supportive. The fact that we can produce something like Graham in Victoria and allow the global community to benefit from that, it has just been blowing my mind that I've been able to be involved in something like that. And eventually this community, as I've grown with in road safety and my experience and my knowledge, has also accepted me into the very career that I wanted to be in, which was global development and being of service and trying to improve the health and well-being, particularly of those in our lower middle income countries. And I've been involved on the UN expert road safety group now since about 2018. And this is the group looking at how we can best serve the global community, so not just our community, in terms of road safety, and trying to make some really high level recommendations about how we can do this, some simple things that are going to have impact wherever you are in the world. And it sort of brings me to another point about road safety, which it just never sort of would have occurred to me that you could be in a career where the types of crashes you're having on country roads in Victoria are very similar to the ones that you might be having in the northern parts of Sweden, the southern parts of Italy, and the lower parts of South America. Wherever I go in the world, we have a language which is similar, if not almost identical, to be able to talk about issues. I've literally never gone to an international meeting where I don't understand and can't participate, because the issues are so universal, and really the solutions, now that we understand this safe system approach and the impact of energy, are really quite internationally applicable. And so the fact that I have been able to be involved in that, it's really brought my career to a full circle. I've actually ended up exactly where I wanted to start. It has taken about 30 years, but I'm very happy that I've actually got there. So I'm just going to conclude now and leave lots of time for discussion, because I really want this more to be about a chat than about me. But I think what I now know is I've let myself be values and passion led, and followed that belief and desire, and it has actually led me to where I want. There hasn't been a day ever that I can think of that I haven't wanted to get up and go to work, and I've enjoyed every day of that. And part of that is because I really do value the team I have and the teams I've had, and my colleagues, whether they be at departments within Victoria, across Australia, or internationally. I genuinely like that we can collaborate and work together in partnership to achieve. And I think I've got a quote there saying, individually, we are one drop, but together we're the ocean. And when it comes to road safety, it's very much about that. As individuals, we know that we will really able to touch the surface, but together we really can make change. I think one of the other areas that's really stood me in good stead for a longer time is be evidence-based. and be prepared to learn from others. And so whatever it is, I really try to understand what's the evidence telling us. You know, we can be very intuitive and use our, I suppose, our own experience very easily in road safety. And I know particularly motorcyclists are often saying to me that, well, you know, you're not a motorcyclist, which actually, by the way, isn't true. I do have a motorcycle license, but, you know, you wouldn't know. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't think as a driver about that at all when I'm making road safety decisions. I'm looking at the evidence base. So I think it's really important to always go back to that and say, what evidence have we got that this is going to work? Because we have limited human resource and we've got limited capital funding to do things. So it's really important whatever we do, we try and get it right the first time. And it's really a big shout out to say how important our research community is as part of that bigger picture and part of the road safety community. Without them, we would be nowhere. But the other part of this is, you know, really be prepared to learn and listen to others. I really don't think I've ever had a truly unique idea, but I think what I've been okay at doing is listening to others and thinking how an idea from one person and a bit of evidence from somebody else might work together to get a really good outcome. And last but not least, I think the thing that I've learnt most in road safety is we're all here for the long haul. That probably the fastest way for us to get where we need to go, which I think is to see nobody seriously injured or killed on our roads, is to go slowly. Consistency, and planning and making sure we put our absolute best foot forward, I feel is going to be the way we get to where we want to go. Often in haste, I think that we do things which intuitively feel good, but won't last the distance. I think this is my number one mantra. It always seems impossible until it's done. I remember also when I heard from Klaus Tingvall up on that stage at the OACV club in Melbourne, you know, the idea that they had actually enshrined the idea of zero in Sweden as this is our target. And I'm thinking, oh, there's no way we would ever be able to talk to the Victorian community about zero. We could never say that that's our aim, like they would just shout us down. But, you know, 10 years later, we did launch towards zero, and it was amazing how the Victorian community rallied to support that idea. We had so little resistance. I was absolutely blown away that do the work, the background work, slowly plan, make sure that you're consistent, and it will have an impact. So with that, I'll thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sam. That was really interesting and quite inspiring because, like so many of us, we've come from somewhere that didn't start as road safety, and this is where we've ended up. So it's really interesting to hear your take on how that's happened and how you've moved through that process. So there's a couple of questions that I have for you. The first one was really about, you did a lot of education and things prior to starting at the TAC, all your degrees and heading for your masters. And did you ever finish that masters?
Well, I have got a master's, but it isn't in economics of developing world because they didn't really offer that. So I did actually go back and do some other subjects at Melbourne Uni, which helped me along that way, but never a full degree in economics of the developing world. And in some ways, probably not such a bad thing, because how we think about the developing world is very different now to what I would have learned 25, 30 years ago.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that actually brings me to the second part of the question. was once you got to the TAC and you started getting into the space, what training did you have? What sort of, yeah, how do you kind of qualify yourself as road safety qualified, so to speak? What did you do?
I think probably two things, and a big shout out to my team. And when I talk about team, it's the team I've had the whole way through TAC. But particularly somebody who many of you will know, who unfortunately died a couple of years ago now, David Healy, who was fairly much my boss, manager, mentor for my entire career at TAC. And in a way, you didn't need too much more than that, because he was incredibly knowledgeable. He was very thirsty for knowledge and information, and incredibly patient and evidence-based. Having said that, though, I did continue to do postgraduate once I was at the TAC, and they supported that. But I think the big thing that I did was really stay curious, continue to look internationally particularly, but also interstate, attend conferences, attend professional development sessions, talk to people about your ideas and why they might not work, and spend the time. And I'll just give you a real example. Some of you might know something called How Safe Is Your Car, which is the TAC's brand for vehicle safety. But it was a project given to me when I was still doing my economist thing with the Blackspot Program. But they thought I needed to expand my horizon, which I probably did, and said, you can do this. And they gave me a year to build. There was no How Safe Is Your Car. We had nothing. We had NCAP and the used car safety rating programs, which weren't being heavily promoted at all. But the project actually took me 2 years to do. And it was in about early 2000, I think it was 2000, 2001, rather than 1 year. And I can't tell you, I'm sure somebody like David Healy wanted to sack me over it. But we got this product that has lived on now for 22, 23 years. It continues to be a solid base. And I bring that up because I think this is where it's so important to get it right in the first place in road safety, because I have seen, and not so much, to be honest, in Australia, but you can see a lot of evidence of lots of energy being put into projects that just don't really have the sustainability in terms of the design or the ability to make change. And I think that's where it's really important. So my other thing really in what you've asked is that I've had people who believe in me, and I really hope that I'm returning that belief to my teams as well.
Fantastic. We've got a question from Andrea. Apart from Graham, and so many of us have seen and loved Graham, he's ugly as sin, but he is really quite a delightful tool for those of us that work in road safety, and I've certainly used them in some of my presentations. So thank you for Graham. But Andrea asks, apart from Graham, what has been your kind of major achievement, if you like, your favourite achievement in road safety?
But Graham wasn't so much my major achievement as one of my favourite ones, because you can imagine launching Graham. It was hard to get a lot of people across the line on Graham. So you can imagine, and the fact that he's gone on to be such a success is more heartening than anything else. It's trusting your own judgment. Look, I think the reality of being able to continue building our infrastructure program, being more and more effective into a more systems thinking program from what was a Blackspot program, been really one of the things that it doesn't sound difficult, but delivering that has actually been quite difficult. And there's it's always easier to take a Blackspot approach when you're talking about seeking investment, because if people have already died or been seriously injured at any one location, it's easier to create the investment case for investing there. So I think being able to convince our decision makers to invest where risk rather than crashes is or are is really one of the biggest sort of the areas that I feel like I've made the most, I suppose, gains. I think the other one is, interestingly, I talked about how safe is your car. I distinctly remember when I started talking to people about what I was working on when it got a little bit more developed. I remember two people in road safety saying, no, vehicle safety is not road safety. No, you can't actually talk to the community about that. And they were very serious about counselling me that you couldn't go down that path. That's not your job in road safety to be talking to people about the safety of the car they're buying. And it only showed me how little impact that a fairly young NCAP program had at the time. But my mind actually had never been that close. It had never occurred to me that it wasn't our job in road safety to do something. And I think really that's the other, it was more that that project taught me so much about not being closed-minded and actually being open to achieving outcomes in the best way you think you can and using every opportunity.
Cool. Just there's been a request, could you turn off your screen sharing, Sam, so that we can see more of our team? That would be lovely. Thank you. Much appreciated. Hannah's asked the question or made the comment, it's refreshing to see the connection emphasised between road safety and being of service to the community. Do you think that this way of viewing road safety could help promote the field and attract more of the accidental talent that we've been talking about?
Yeah, I actually do. And I suspect road safety, 20 years ago or so when I first entered it, even though it was a very new area of endeavour for the TAC, as an example, Vic Roads had a very large road safety department, which was nurturing talent. So, you had layers of, you'd have the quasi-professor looking after impairment and was really a world expert on things like drink driving and drug driving. And then there will be nurturing a layer of people under that. And some of the people we still see here today are very much a result of that type of system. And I think it is, the way public service works, etc. Now, the opportunities aren't quite the same, but I actually do think if we could spend a little bit more time promoting what you get the opportunity to be involved in. And as an example, this larger Australasian community, the international community, the ability to help people in an evidence-based way. I certainly, at an international level, it's probably viewed more that way, I'd say, than necessarily in Australia. The other thing I'd say about that is just recently we've actually started advertising when we've got jobs on some of the platforms that are normally used for NGOs, like non-government organisations. And it's interesting how many really talented people we're now getting through those channels, because they're actually looking for different types of jobs. They're not looking necessarily to be a public servant or for money. They're looking to make a difference. And so just even where we're looking to source people from has been really important.
Excellent, thank you. Tasha has asked, as you would be aware, the ACRS has recently been considering the implementation of the safe systems approach to date. How far can it take us towards zero, and the potential benefits for systems thinking? What is your view?
Well, I suppose you've probably got it in a way. Yeah, look, if you're, I've heard people say, look, the safe system's not working. I would say what's not working is our implementation. I'm really fortunate enough, obviously, being involved in those international committees exposes me to a lot of what's happening internationally. And in terms of our implementation and the parts of the safe system we've been able to implement and how systematically we've been able to implement it has really left a lot to be desired. And I have to say that's pretty much in every state across Australia. My view is that systems thinking, look, if you look already, say Norway, Sweden, and even some of the lower Southern European type of countries, just doing things like being able to get safer speed limits or safe speed limits and the EU vehicle regs, we've seen massive drops in the number of people being killed and seriously injured. So it can definitely take us far further than we are right now. Their rates of fatalities are half of those that we have. Whether it can get us right to the end, I really think it will probably be technology that gets us that last, say, 10, 15, 20%. But I think until that point, we've got something that's going to take us a long way. And if Victoria could have, 30 or 40 people losing their lives in 25 years, say, and we were relying on technology to get us to that last, few people, I'd be very happy. So, yeah, big supporter. I still think working at the sort of root cause, which is the, energy impacting our body, is the best opportunity we've got. One of my David Healy isms is that, if we're relying on behavioural change in itself to solve road safety, we're relying on every person who uses the road every day, every time to be perfect, and it's just not going to happen.
No. So this is one of my questions personally. How do you deal with the dinosaurs that don't want to look at a safe systems approach? I'm sure every organisation has those within them, or the relics of them.
Yeah, I think, look, to some degree, I think there's always the opportunity to help people to see the light, so to speak. But I think, there are some people who just don't want to change. I know I had somebody talking quite emphatically to me the other day about the fact that we can't use what I call the league table. So exactly what I was just talking to you about, our rates of fatality per 100,000, and compare, as an example, Norway to Australia, because, culturally we're just so different. And I was sort of saying, but the crashes aren't different. And this doesn't rely, culture does rely, when we're talking about behavioural change and campaigns and education, that's hugely different. But when we're coming to designing a road and basically designing for physics, designing to conserve energy, actually nothing changes whether you're on the road in Sweden, Norway or Australia. And so I think there is still a lot of misconceptions, and we can't compare ourselves to a Norway as an example. And I think it's also sort of quite closed in thinking that way, because yes, we may not be able to do exactly what they are doing, but we can certainly learn. If they reduce their fatalities or serious injuries by half or even more, we can certainly learn from that. And at the very least, we should be doing that.
Excellent, thank you. Another question for you, or comment. Victoria has a unified bipartisan approach to road safety. So how important do you think that is in order of keeping, in terms of keeping both political parties on the road safety side?
Look, I think it is important. The history of road safety in Victoria is very important. We do have good support from all political sides, including even greater than the bipartisan. And I think what it offers the opportunity for any government having a partnership is the idea that you do actually get a strategy that ensures that you don't get duplication or competing priorities, that you actually have a plan which everybody's signed up to and is moving towards. I think it's been quite important in Victoria's case, and I think when I look internationally, particularly where enforcement and transport areas aren't well coordinated and information and data is not being shared, it really is a problem, because you don't even understand what your problems are or what you're planning for in the first place. So definitely quite important. Yeah.
And lastly, comment from Sajan. Sam, you've definitely paid David and Klaus' legacy forward with your team at the TAC, but also across Victoria, Australia and internationally. So thank you. And I think that's a really good way to wrap up our discussions. We really appreciate you being here. But I think, you know, understanding that what you have done, and I understand it's not just you, there is a team behind you, but it's really important that we acknowledge that. And we say, hey, thank you for all the work that you do and you continue to do, and your teams.
Oh, thank you, and yes, thank you very much to my team. I don't know whether anybody's here because they're all so busy, but yeah, look, I'm incredibly lucky to have such a supportive and knowledgeable and passionate team, and absolutely bar none in terms of the people we have at the TAC. So, and thank you very much for having me and such insightful and great questions.
Been lovely to have you. Thank you all.
Thanks a lot.
Just a reminder to everybody, applause very much welcome. Just a reminder to everybody that this will be that has been recorded. It will be up online in the not too distant future, so that information will come out to you. And thank you everybody for joining us. Have a wonderful and safe weekend. Obviously, take care out there on the roads. Till next time, goodbye.